From 1820, when the Missouri Compromise was reached, until the election of President Lincoln, various events took place that furthered the schism between North and South, all over the issues of the expansion of slavery as America expanded westward, all of which you can learn about in this section. The conventional explanation on the cause of the Civil War was best dated by President Ulysses S. Grant at the conclusion of his memoirs, which he was writing as he was dying.
The cause of the Great War of Rebellion against the United States will have to be attributed to slavery. For some years before the war began, it was a trite saying among some politicians that a state half slave and half free cannot exist. All must become slave or all free, or the state will go down. I took no part myself in any such view of the case at the time, but since the war is over, reviewing the whole question, I have come to the conclusion that the saying is quite true. Slavery was an institution that required unusual guarantees for its security wherever it existed. And in a country like ours, where the larger portion of it was free territory, inhabited by an intelligent and well-to-do population, the people would naturally have but little sympathy with demands upon them for its protection. Hence, the people of the South were dependent upon keeping control of the general government to secure the perpetuation of their favorite institution. They were enabled to maintain this control long after the states where slavery existed had ceased to have the controlling power, through the assistance they received from odd men here and there throughout the northern states. They saw their power waning, and this led them to encroach upon the prerogatives and independence of the northern states by enacting such laws as the Fugitive Slave Law. By this law, every northern man was obliged, when properly summoned, to turn out and help apprehend the runaway slave of a southern man. Northern marshals became slave catchers, and northern courts had to contribute to the support and protection of the institution. This was a degradation which the North would not permit any longer than until they could get the power to expunge such laws from the statute books. Prior to the time of these encroachments, the great majority of the people of the North had no particular quarrel with slavery, so long as they were not forced to have it themselves. But they were not willing to play the role of police for the South in the protection of this particular institution. In the early days of the country, before we had railroads, telegraphs, and steamboats, in a word, rapid transit of any sort, the states were each almost a separate nationality. At that time, the subject of slavery caused but little or no disturbance to the public mind. But the country grew. Rapid transit was established, and trade and commerce between the states got to be so much greater than before that the power of the national government became more felt and recognized, and therefore had to be enlisted in the cause of this institution.
Grant's explanation was right as far as it goes. However, there are limitations with it. First, while slavery was the sharpest dividing line between North and South, the North and South were drifting apart in other ways as well. The North was entering the Industrial Revolution, while the South's economy was becoming ever more agrarian. The North was the beneficiary of ever larger numbers of immigrants, thus swelling its population. The South was not. The issues of whether a Western state would be free or slave was not only an issue of slavery, but also of power. For if more states entered the Union as free states than as slave states, the ability of the South to maintain its hold on federal power through its control of the Senate would be broken. Finally, there is a question if the war had to be fought at all, or whether it could have been avoided. Bruce Catton, the renowned historian of the Civil War, wrote, "Beyond any question, almost all of the people in the United States in 1860 wanted to remain at peace. Wanting this, they kept drifting toward war, and as they drifted, the power to make the final, irrevocable decision, the ability to say or to leave unsaid the words that could start the guns firing, got further and farther out of their hands. This meant that 600,000 young men who otherwise might have lived were going to die, but it seemed that there was no help for it. Indeed, the United States drifted toward civil war almost in a trance. The ability to compromise that Americans were known for seemed to have eluded Americans. The South did not believe that the North would elect Lincoln. The North did not believe that the South would secede, and the South never believed that the North would fight for the Union. Thus, when South Carolina seceded in December 1860, after the election of Abraham Lincoln as president, war was the only possible result. While some say the Civil War was unavoidable, the death of so many young Americans was a result of a series of miscalculations. The ultimate result, the elimination of slavery in the United States, could have probably been achieved by other means less costly in both life and property.